picture?
No, video.
Oh, we're doing down. Oh, okay.
Oh, I do a video. It's easier to do the video. That way I can just listen to it and transpose it
Okay, good.
for
good,
the
good,
newsletter.
Good, okay.
Yeah, it seems to work out best.
Good.
All right. All right, AnnMarie, you have had a pretty long connection with the open shelter. How many years? And talk a little bit about that.
I would have to say starting in 2000.
Okay.
I believe, and I started with Columbus Neighborhood Health Centers, and I worked for healthcare for the homeless.
Okay.
And that's when I kind of met everybody at 61 East Mount Street, I believe it is. Yeah, the Mount Street location.
It wasn't before that? Not at State Street?
Oh, I forgot you guys were. That's right. It was right before that, I think.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember.
Were you ever at that building on State Street?
You're not talking about that other church,
No, okay.
No,
All right, I'm
no,
thinking
that-
too early. No, we used to have
right? And
a building kind of like this. People could sleep overnight. They could stay overnight. Okay, so maybe I might be confusing with someone. I apologize about that.
But I went there with my. This is what I was gonna. I totally forgot. I went to the original one, which you talk about on State Street. I thought it was on Broad, but my mother used to take me and volunteer.
Oh, you volunteered there?
Yes, and as a child, and I didn't know until I was talking to her about it because she also has come up and volunteered at Open Shelter.
Your mother has volunteered with us?
Yeah, I mean, like
Oh, okay.
eons, but her and her now wife, we would make coffee and sandwiches.
Okay.
And we'd go downtown, and there would be other places, and we would.
Okay.
And I remember Kent,
Right.
but I didn't remember this till recently.
Wow.
but
Who
me-
were you volunteering with?
I was like in not elementary, junior high. So I vaguely remember. My mom said, "Don't you remember going down there?" Because my mom was so happy when I started volunteering
Right.
on Mound Street, and I didn't understand why. I'm like, well, yeah, but it was because she somehow, because she was always active
Were
with the
you
homeless.
volunteering with her on your own, or was it through a
with
school?
her. No, with her, my mother.
Oh,
and so
okay.
yeah, and so.
So you and your
'Cause I would
mother would
complain.
come down to State Street and volunteer.
yeah.
All right. So even before you even really had an adult connection with us, you were
Right.
volunteering. How long did you volunteer?
It was
Or
like
how old were you?
I was like maybe I want to say junior high.
Okay.
If-
Do you
yeah.
remember anything about that? Like how it impacted you?
No,
or...
well, I became a social worker.
Okay.
I mean, I've always wanted to work with the most underserved.
Okay.
And I've always believed that the homeless were because of what I saw when I was with my mother and her partner. We'd always go out, and that's when a lot of people were at the river right there. Would always sleep at the river,
Right.
and we'd do coffee and sandwiches and all that. And so I grew up always help. I just was part of our family of helping
Okay.
others and all that. But I don't think my connection with the open shelter was until I worked for Columbus Neighborhood Health Center.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
And that would be
Like
at
it was in 2000.
2000. So
Yeah.
pretty much at Trinity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's when it started. See, I
Oh,
thought
no,
you,
no, 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 no. You're right there downtown. That we have to go the side door to go up the stairs.
okay, so Mound Street.
No, no, no. Before Mount Street. What was right there? It was like hard to get to because you had to park in the alley. It was before. It was downtown, yes, because I remember having to park
Was
there.
it the big building?
And we had to.
Because we had State Street.
I'm thinking maybe it had to have been State Street because I remember to park there to drop stuff off and to pick stuff up. It was like an alley.
Okay.
I guess. Well, maybe it was State Street, but it looked like an alley, and you couldn't park there because we would meet with the coalition sometimes.
I think you're thinking of Trinity Episcopal.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
it-
not the one on map, the other one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I remember.
That has to
yes.
be Trinity Episcopal.
sorry.
All right,
Yes.
so
I feel so old now.
that's
yeah.
right. Your connection.
I forgot it was then.
So started then. What were you doing at that time?
The time I was working for healthcare for the homeless.
Okay.
And we actually what I did is I would come to the open shelter once or twice a week.
Right.
And I would sit here and get services or sign people up who were living on the streets or in the shelters that needed services. And I was also part of the outreach group that we'd go every Tuesday, all the agencies, and go out into the woods. And Solomon and I lived 2 blocks from each other, so we became very good friends.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, at the time, yeah.
So you were going out with like Ken Andrews at
Oh,
that
yeah, oh,
time.
yeah.
You were going out on the land, outreach, doing out.
Yeah, Jerry Pierce,
Jerry
Ken,
Pierce.
right?
Oh, wow. Talk about some of that then. Some of the
So
experiences
weird.
going out on the land.
I
Some
even
of the things you might
myself
have
was
encountered.
very surprised because I too had assumptions, and I met people who had college degrees, people who weren't what society thought they were, like
Right.
addicts first.
Right.
And that's when I learned that it wasn't, a lot of people didn't pick up or have an addiction until they became homeless because of their circumstances. A lot of people lost their jobs and didn't have supports.
Right.
And it gave me a huge different perspective of all the barriers, so many in our community, the underserved, there's so many barriers,
Right.
especially if you're living on the land. And so that really, in my relationship with Kent, made me want to be, I modeled myself after him because I did, because he was kind of a take no,
Right.
he advocated for the homeless no matter
Right.
what was going on. So yeah.
So going out on the land, I know when I was out, a few times I've been out, I was impressed by the ingenuity people seem to have, the way they could make things work,
Yes.
living outside, living in a campsite. Like there was one campsite I went to where they figured it out how to have plumbing, to have water running into their campsite.
Yes.
They had a sink. They had it partitioned. They had a huge tent,
Some of them had rooms.
right.
Because one
Yeah,
people I
they were
met
partitioned. Right.
was a veteran that was on the land, and we really needed to get him into the doctor. He only had one leg. What was his name? But if he didn't get to the VA, they were probably going to cut off the other leg. And he said to me, "I'll tell you what, Miss Lady, if you come out here and stay out here with me for 2 weeks, I'll go to the VA."
Oh, wow.
And I got approval, and I did. I stayed out there.
Really?
Yeah, and he had like 2 rooms.
Yep.
I mean, it was like laid out, and there was a documentary that I was in I was when they tore down a lot of those, but
Right.
they're the most innovative places I've seen. A lot of them better than some of the places I lived
Well,
in
yeah,
college.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I went to one campsite. They had a huge tent. And they had guest rooms cordoned off.
Yeah.
He said, "This is the guest room. This is where if somebody visits, they can stay here." And like I said, they had a working sink. They had like almost like a kitchen area. So I was amazed. It's not just, in a lot of cases, it's not just tents thrown up.
Yeah, which a lot of people think, and that's not what
Right.
it is at all. And I asked a gentleman, and I said, "Well, you have carpentry skills, you're an electrician." And that's when I got a big lesson. And I said, what
Right.
is it? Because he didn't have addiction. And he said, employers, when they know you put a shelter's address down,
Right.
they sometimes, hold that against you, or you don't have an alarm clock to get you up at 5 in the morning,
Right.
and all these barriers I didn't even think about. And so
Right.
going to outreach was not only learning about all these massive skills they had, but the bigger barriers of people who wanted to work, willing to work, but because of society's perspective and
Right.
the misconception of the homeless, they continue to, be in
Right.
those situations.
So you were with Healthcare for the Homeless about how long?
5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And then talking to Solomon, he mentioned that you kind of ran into your own issues.
Yeah, I had a lot of trauma happen here in Columbus.
Okay.
And I left and to go to North Carolina and to kind of get away from all that. Unfortunately, my best social work skills and my college degree, I started to abuse the pain medicine that I was prescribed to by my doctor.
Okay. Now you mentioned the trauma. Is that something you'd want to
Because
speak
I
about?
was and people know about it, I was a victim of a home invasion, actually
Oh.
right on Stewart,
Oh, wow.
where 5 men kicked in my door and brutally raped and tortured. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was pretty, but I thought because I was a social worker and I knew everything, I could manage it. And so I ran
Okay.
away to North Carolina,
Okay.
and I didn't realize because of my being a workaholic and always,
Right.
when I would take the pain medicine, it gave me energy.
Okay.
And so I could do more work. And so I thought that meant I wasn't an addict.
Right.
It didn't matter to me. And
Since you were working,
yeah, I worked the whole time. I was very functioning.
so you figured that I wasn't addicted. It's just
Yeah.
making me
I'm not what
function
I
better.
was. Yeah, I'm not on the street begging.
Right.
And Yeah, and so that was for about 10 years. It progressively got worse.
Okay.
And I lost everything.
Oh, wow.
And I called my sister and I said, I'm ready, I need help. And, excuse me. And she said I couldn't bring anything with me. I could bring my 2 cats and my dog. And I had to leave my car, 3-bedroom, everything.
Right.
And I said, okay. Let me tell you how God works. So I went to NetCare.
Yeah.
I used to work with 2 kind of through. And then I had to go to Mary Haven Engagement Center.
Okay.
And when I worked for Healthcare for the Homeless, one of the places I went to was Mary Haven Engagement Center, the main Mary Haven and Women's program.
Okay.
I walked in and James Alexander was running the show.
Right.
James and I graduated Capital University together and got our bachelor's
really?
degree together.
James, who's on our board.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just did a video about this. I was so embarrassed and so ashamed because I used to work there with, I'm saying, I was professional with them, and I was so embarrassed and so ashamed.
Right.
Because I said, I cannot believe I have to come back here.
Yeah.
And he put his arm around me and he said, I'm so glad you're here. And it was that was probably the kindest thing that someone did during my recovery, because now I saw how it felt like
Right.
to be treated differently because I had nothing.
Right.
And so I went to Amethyst. I had to stay at the engagement center 3 months
Okay.
to get into Amethyst, which was interesting.
Now, Amethyst is...
Now, yeah, it's a long-term trauma-informed
Okay.
recovery program for women